Two more huge matches signed for No Regrets this past week on Loaded, so we have plenty to discuss today on the ReLoaded podcast. Dave Bradshaw here with you, as always, alongside Mr. James R. Kennedy. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, but I'm willing to bet good money, Dave Bradshaw, that after what happened with a certain sport over the past week, that you're in a much better mood than I.
I certainly am. It's little known, I suppose, unless you are stalking me on social media, that I am a Tottenham Hotspur fan. And for those who don't follow football, they made it to their first ever European final. Now there was a little spanner in the works with that originally, because the Champions League final, which is the final of the biggest European club competition in Europe, is on the 1st of June now, and we have loaded tapings that day. Right, in Newcastle. In fact, the return of Pac to Defiant Wrestling on the 1st of June. But fortunately, our wonderful general manager, General Amin, has decided that since it's two English teams who have got into that final, Tottenham and Liverpool, we're going to compete on June the 1st, that because everyone's going to want to see that, we're going to be taping in the afternoon on Saturday, June the 1st, not the evening. So afternoon show now in Newcastle on June the 1st. And then hopefully, I'm hoping, if anyone wants to tweet me, by the way, and tell me a good pub in Newcastle to watch my team win the Champions League, then I would appreciate it, because I'm going to need somewhere to go in Newcastle after we finish taping on June the 1st. So tweet me at Dave Bradshaw, and I will happily accept recommendations for where to go. So yeah, June the 1st, now that loaded taping going to be an afternoon show. But yes, you're right. I am in a fine mood as my football team made one of the greatest comebacks in sporting history. How was your week?
Well, my week was excellent. It was football free, I have to say, because that's a bit of a lowbrow sport for the likes of I'm much more of a water polo kind of chap myself. Rugby sometimes, but not football.
Who's your favourite water polo team?
I like all the teams. I'm a very fair man. I don't like to pick and choose.
You don't support anyone?
No, it depends who's winning, to be honest.
I'm sure it does, yeah.
Well, why not? That's the way to be. But do you know what really hacks me off about this whole Champions League business and the fact that now the June 1st loaded tapings are a matinee show is the fact that because that was General Amin's decision, Bradshaw, you're going to think he's even better at his job.
I think it's in a career as general manager that has been exceptional. I think it's his best decision yet.
Of course.
But anyway, I'm sure there's lots of people who are going to want to watch that match. Our women's champion, I'm sure, will want to watch that, because Lizzie Styles, as we know, is a great Liverpool fan.
Well, I would suggest that whatever pub you frequent to watch the Champions League final after those loaded tapings, you stay out of arm's reach of the Defiant women's champion, win or lose.
I'm pretty sure I don't frequent the same kind of pubs as Lizzie Styles anyway. But we've had a question on this, by the way, of all things. Kimmy, who pretty much gives us a question every week, we're always grateful for it, wants to know, this is a great question, after what happened in the Premier League last Sunday with Lana, because we're talking about in the Premier League, Manchester City won the league, right, at Liverpool's expense. So Liverpool haven't had a perfect week. With Lana Austin, who's from Manchester, facing Lizzie Styles, who's from Liverpool at No Regrets, could we see Manchester getting all of the gold this month? I don't know if that's a question intended to rile up Lizzie Styles, but she could be in a fairly bad mood in the next month or so, couldn't she?
Well, Kimmy, I think I speak for everyone when I say start running now, because if the Defiant Women's Champion hears what you've asked, then you're in big trouble. But you raise an interesting point, because of course Lana Austin from Manchester, that's where No Regrets emanates from. It could be a clean sweep for Manchester, shall we say, but I have full confidence in Lizzie Styles and her abilities.
Now, that's one of the things we talked about last week, right? About this second showdown between Lizzie Styles and Lana Austin. It was, after all, against Lana Austin that Styles won the vacated women's title that had been given up by Kanji just moments earlier. This second time around, though, the match is in Manchester, so I do think there will be advantage to Lana Austin, both in terms of her confidence, in terms of the crowd support, in terms of all of that stuff. Now, at the start of the show, I said there's been 2 matches signed for No Regrets in Manchester on May 25th. This past Sunday on Loaded. Let's talk about both of those now. Now, the first of them, I think, is extremely interesting based on what we were talking about last week here on this very show regarding who we think the favourite is for the No Regrets Rumble. You said, and I pretty much agreed with you, unfortunately for me, that Gabriel Kidd, because he's drawn number 30, is probably the favourite of the entrants that we know so far, at least, for the No Regrets Rumble. A week later, I think he's blown it. What do you think?
Well, I would have to say, if I was Gabriel Kidd's manager, which admittedly I'm not, and to be honest, he doesn't bloody need one either, but I would have advised Kidd against this sort of move. But Bradshaw, even you have to admit that General Amin duped Gabriel Kidd. He got his dander up and he talked the young bull into this match. It was grossly unfair.
Now, what we're talking about, for those who haven't seen Loaded, is that Gabriel Kidd went and saw General Amin back in the locker room, back in Amin's office during Loaded on Sunday, and insisted on a match against David Starr, who, as we know, is drawn number 1 in the No Regrets Rumble. He wants to, in Kidd's words, take Starr out of commission before the Rumble match even happens. So General Amin said, okay, you can have your match, but you're going to put your number 30 position on the line. So we now know it's going to be prior to the No Regrets Rumble. Earlier that same night, we're going to see Gabriel Kidd versus David Starr. The winner of that match will now be the person who enters the Rumble at number 30, and the loser will get the number 1 spot. So it's possible that they switch positions if Starr wins the match. We were talking about how Kidd is the favourite. We were talking about how it's going to be very hard to beat him because he's going to be the freshest man in there. At number 30 as the last man to enter the match in the Rumble. That's why I say he's blown it. Let's say even if he wins this match against David Starr, we know from the last time they competed against each other at No Regrets, it was a very physical, very hard-fought battle. So even if Kidd somehow pulls out the win and retains his number 30 spot, the advantage that he would have had from being fresh and from being the last man into that Rumble match is gone. His arrogance in insisting that he has a match against David Starr to take him out of the Rumble has cost him every single advantage that he would have had in the No Regrets Rumble, even if he keeps the number 30 spot. Now, you're a big Gabriel Kidd fan, but argue against that. I bet you can't.
Well, again, all I can think of is that Gabriel Kidd, he was restraining himself from punching General Amin in the face. Because they have history, and we all know that at every which way General Amin has tried to undercut Gabriel Kidd and stop him from succeeding. So all I can think of, Dave, is that Gabriel Kidd was so focused on one thing that he forgot everything else and somehow talked his way into this match, which has huge ramifications. Now, for me, this is not a good situation for Gabriel Kidd because anything could happen in that one-on-one match with David Starr. An injury, a soul-crushing defeat, anything. The only winner in this situation for my money is the product David Starr, because now Starr could do the unthinkable. In no time at all, almost, he could go from impossible odds to the shortest odds. He could go from the number 1 entrant in the No Regrets Rumble to number 30, and that would be huge. That could turn around David Starr's entire career here in Defiant.
Well, yeah, I mean, Starr definitely has nothing to lose in the sense that he couldn't have been in a worse position, obviously, than in the number 1 spot. The same would be true of Starr, of course. Even if he wins the match and becomes number 30, he will have been through what will undoubtedly be a punishing match against Gabriel Kidd. So it's not exactly the advantage that number 30 would normally be because of that prior punishment that his body will have taken going into that Rumble match. But yeah, I mean, for Starr, the chance to win that match against Kidd obviously would improve his position. For Gabriel Kidd, there's no such benefit. He either keeps the number 30 position he had, but he's going to have been through a grueling one-on-one match going into the Rumble, or it gets even worse for him, and he goes through that grueling one-on-one match and then has to enter the Rumble at number 1. Oh. So there's no benefit to it. He's overstepped the mark in terms of his arrogance, his confidence, his belief in himself, his belief in his ability to beat David Starr, because he just about narrowly defeated him at Lights Out, that he thinks he's going to instantly dispose of him and suffer no ill effects, is just the height of arrogance. It is the height of arrogance, and he's going to pay a dear, dear price for it. If I said to you last week that I reluctantly accepted that Gabriel Kidd might be the favourite for the No Regrets Rumble, I take it back, because he isn't now.
Well, it remains to be seen, but one thing I will say is Gabriel Kidd can take solace, if you like, in the fact that that low blow, which caused the disqualification against Joe Hendry, Kidd smashed Hendry right in those prestigious plums. I was quite enjoying that match, by the way, but I don't think Gabriel Kidd will see this as a major defeat, simply because he got to injure and insult Joe Hendry as well. He got to pound on him a little more after the bell, before David Starr made the save, and then it all went belly up from there for Starr and Hendry. They went at it as well, but my original point was Gabriel Kidd can take solace in the fact that manoeuvres like that low blow, which traditionally in a wrestling ring would be illegal, they're not going to be illegal in that No Regrets Rumble. So even if he somehow loses to David Starr and ends up the number one entrant, he can just punch everyone in the nuts until he gets all the way to David Starr at number 30 and then sock him in the balls as well.
That would be your advice, would it? If you were managing Gabriel Kidd, you'd tell him, if he ended up coming in at number one, you'd tell him, just punch everyone in the nuts and you'll be fine.
Well, that's what I would do. Now, granted, I am not a professional wrestler.
No, you are
even
not.
Though I do have a good record inside that ring. But, this desperate times call for desperate measures. If Gabriel Kidd loses to David Starr, then he might as well go in with a plan as harebrained as that. Because, being the number one entrant in the No Regrets Rumble is certainly something that nobody wants. I don't care what anyone says. David Starr, he is the kind of, long-lasting, durable athlete who could go wire to wire, as could Gabriel Kidd, but no one's going to sit there and tell me that either one of those men want to be number one. So you're going to have to come up with some sort of plan pretty quickly.
Now, let me pick you up on this thing you were saying about Gabriel Kidd in that match against Joe Hendry on Loaded this past Sunday. We were all looking forward to that match, I think, because given that they had a 20-minute time limit draw, we couldn't separate them last time they competed against each other at Magnificent 7. We were all hoping we might get a decisive winner this time. But I think Gabriel Kidd showed again that he can't beat Joe Hendry. He can't beat him, because in that 20-minute time limit draw, it was Kidd who was clinging on for dear life to avoid tapping out when the timer ran out. This time, he obviously felt like he couldn't beat Hendry, because why else would you get yourself disqualified? So I don't understand the logic of a Gabriel Kidd decision to get himself disqualified unless he thought that was the best possible outcome that he had open to him.
Well, it could be. I think it was just a rush of blood to the head, because Gabriel Kidd, as I've touched on before, has been under incredible pressure as of late. And I think that is very unfair. On a young athlete's shoulders, that kind of pressure, it must be intolerable.
Hang on, though. But is that his weakness? Because I wonder then whether these rushes of blood to the head, if it was just a moment of madness, a moment of bad decision-making that got him disqualified against Joe Hendry, arguably it's another moment of bad strategizing to go and insist on having a match against David Starr that's cost him quite possibly his advantage going into the No Regrets Rumble. So is that the Achilles heel of Gabriel Kidd, that he makes rash decisions that take away whatever advantage he has sometimes?
Well, if he's prone to rash decisions, as you call them, and also prone to bouts of extreme violence and rage and anger, I actually think that might help him in this No Regrets Rumble, because it's the law of the jungle in this thing. 30 of the finest professional wrestlers around the globe, every person for themselves. It's going to be huge, and whether Gabriel Kidd is number 1 or number 30, he's going to have eyes in the back of his head, and I think he's going to have to use every skill that he possesses, and that includes this angry streak that he has shown over the piece here in Defiant Wrestling. Violence is the way it has to be in this kind of match. There is no other way, and could it be that actually ends up being Gabriel Kidd's chief strength in this match. We'll have to wait and see. But, you do raise a good point when you say that Gabriel Kidd has put himself in a few sticky situations as of late, but I don't think this is anything that the young bull cannot handle.
Now, let's take Gabriel Kidd out of this equation for a minute, because the other dynamic we need to talk a bit more about is one we talked about last week. There was disagreement last week between Joe Hendry and David Starr, and we saw more of that this week. We got physical this week, in fact, when Starr came out to attack Gabriel Kidd after the disqualification against Hendry. Once Gabriel Kidd got out of there, we saw things kicking off pretty badly between Hendry and Starr. Now, we don't know where Hendry is going to enter the No Regrets Rumble. We know that Starr will either be number 1 or number 30. The same is true of Kidd, obviously. Hendry will be somewhere between those two numbers, obviously. But what does this mean for Hendry and Starr? Because presumably they would be among the favourites based on the pedigree they've shown in the Defiant ring, in their careers here in Defiant. And yet, if they're going into this match with a big grudge against each other, then they're going to have a target on each other's backs. Therefore, that affects their chances of winning the Rumble, doesn't it?
I would have to say so, because in this kind of match, I don't think anyone can afford to fixate on one person. You have to think of everyone else. There are 29 other athletes involved in that match, and the very nature of the No Regrets Rumble, it says that anyone can win. Anything can happen. It's just so unpredictable. It's one of the most exciting matches of the year for that very reason. So I think this is true of all three men. Joe Hendry, David Starr and Gabriel Kidd. None of those men can afford to go into this match thinking only about the others. They have to think of the bigger picture and what it could mean to their careers. Now, what's super interesting about this is that David Starr seems to really despise the way Joe Hendry has taken it upon himself to speak on behalf of the Jewish canon. Now, whether that is the prestigious one's intentions or not, that's for Joe Hendry to tell us. But David Starr certainly thinks that Hendry is a bit of a blowhard and seems to like speaking for him, and he doesn't appreciate it. This only works for Gabriel Kidd, because if Gabriel Kidd can defeat David Starr at No Regrets, which admittedly is a tall order, but if he can do it, he will be number 30, David Starr will be number 1, and then hopefully, from the young Bulls' perspective, Joe Hendry is towards, closer to number 1 than he is to number 30, and we could have a situation whereby Gabriel Kidd enters the No Regrets Rumble, and neither Joe Hendry or David Starr are still involved in the match. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's possible, but I think, assuming that they do cross paths in the Rumble, let's take out this uncertainty about who's going to be number 1 and who's number 30 for a minute. But just this, I don't know how to describe it, it's kind of triangle of hatred between Gabriel Kidd, between Joe Hendry and between David Starr, who otherwise would be 3 of the favourites for this match. The fact that their chances are reduced by the hatred they have for each other makes this even more of an open field, this Rumble match, because you've got guys who you otherwise would think would have a far weaker chance of winning the match, with no disrespect to them, but guys like, I don't know, man like Derice, who was the first to qualify, you saw Visage picking their number this week. We've seen Simon Miller entering the Rumble now. He's picked a number this week. They've all been keeping their numbers secret. But people like that who are far less experienced and who you would put far lower down the list of likely winners in normal circumstances, given that 3 of the favourites are at each other's throats, that increases the chances of an unlikely winner coming from nowhere, doesn't it?
It does. It certainly does, because, listen, all that needs to happen is that you're taken by surprise and thrown out over the top rope and both your feet hit the arena floor. Now, it would take a lot to do that to Joe Hendry, Gabriel Kidd or David Starr ordinarily, but if they are so focused on each other, it leaves them, they're ripe for the pickings, is what I'm trying to say. You're right. Anyone could eliminate them at any point in the match. So we're going to have to wait and see whether this triangle of hate, as you called it, actually costs this threesome in the end. But, you would have to say that these 3 men go into the No Regrets Rumble as amongst the favourites, regardless of which number they enter.
Yeah, I just think you can't you can't have eyes for only one person or for two people in a match where there's 10 or 12 people in the ring. That's my point. Because you have to be looking out for everyone. And if you're so laser focused on getting your revenge against someone that you've got this vendetta against, then you're gonna struggle. And I think that is a real problem for anyone who is a fan of any of those three men. So we'll see how that goes. The other match that was announced for No Regrets on Sunday at Loaded, other than this Kid versus Starr match with the number 30 up for grabs, tag team titles are going to be on the line. A very welcome return to Defiant for Team White Wolf from Spain, who we haven't seen in Defiant since March when they had their last title opportunity against the South Coast Connection. They were robbed of victory on that occasion. They get a rematch against SCC on May 25th in Manchester. Now, I know we could go back and forth, round in circles about our views of SCC's tactics, right? And we've done this many, many times on this program. Let me ask you this, though. Regardless of what I think of SCC's tactics, regardless of what you think of them, what is very interesting is what we heard from our general manager this week, because he said he is not impressed with the way in which SCC have been winning their title defenses as of late. And in his words, he is going to be keeping a very, very close eye on the antics of the tag team champions at No Regrets. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think a certain Will Ospreay must be absolutely furious with how General Amin is treating his very best friends. And I'm talking about the Defiant Tag Team Champions, Kelly Six, Ashley Dunn, the SCC. But there's no way around it. You know, you have to defend those championships. General Amin is your boss. He dictates when and where you defend them. And it's Team White Wolf at No Regrets. Now, you've went on about this for the longest time, these shenanigans. And you've even called it, you've went as far to call it, outright cheating from the South Coast Connection. And you've said that the only reason they've managed to hold on to their tag team championships is because they always find a fresh way to cheat. Well, I take issue with that, because I think the SCC, they always find a way to win because they're resourceful young men. They have tactics, a game plan. There's nothing wrong with that. General Amin clearly feels threatened by the fact...
No, what General Amin feels, I think, is what most of us feel who are Defiant Wrestling fans, which is that if you see a team who have championship gold and yet the only way you ever see them win a match is by breaking the rules, then eventually you are left with the only conclusion you can reach, which is that they feel they can only win matches if they break the rules, and therefore they are not worthy champions. Now, if they want to disprove that, that's fine. They can go and do that. They can go and play. They can go and compete against Team White Wolf at No Regrets, one of the best tag teams in Europe, and they can beat them fair and square, cleanly, middle of the ring. And then that will shut up everyone like me who's been saying that they can only win by cheating. But I guarantee you they will try and break the rules to win this match. Whether they're successful or not, who knows? Hopefully Team White Wolf have learned a thing or two from their first encounter with SCC. But they will, won't they? SCC will try and break the rules. They won't believe that they can get it done without breaking the rules, because if they did, they would.
Listen, No Regrets is such a high-intensity pay-per-view. You know, it's the ramifications. You're going to hear me say that word a lot, ramifications over the piece, because there is so much at stake. There is so much money to be made and lost at No Regrets. I think we can overlook if the SCC get a little hot-headed and they decide to use questionable tactics to retain those championships, because... you know, the rules are there to be broken, let's be honest.
Name me one match that they have won since they've been champions without cheating, without breaking the rules behind the referee's back.
It's funny you say that, because I was actually on this very handy website called cagematch.net, and I happened to see that very, very recently, over in Chile, I think it was, the SCC... really? Defended, no, listen, they defended those Defiant Tag Team Championships fair and square against the best tag team in Chile. Now, it's up to you if you want to go and look for that information, but it is right there on the internet, and we all know that everything on the internet is 100% truth.
What was the team called?
They were called the South American Coastal Connection, which the SEC took great umbrage with, because that's gimmick infringement. I don't care if you're all the way across the world in Chile or not. That's disgraceful. But as they always do, Dunn and Six found a way to slay the beast, as we say, and they came up trumps fair and square. So, if you want to go on that website, it might have been taken down by now, because the SEC, they're so modest, they don't want everyone to see their accomplishments. It's only other people who go on about the fact that they're best friends with Will Ospreay, right? I mean, it's never them who say it. So maybe they've had that info taken off the net by now. I don't know.
Now, meanwhile, in things that actually happened, there was another tag team match this past week on Loaded, as the competition in the tag team division heats up more and more all the time. Ben Shaw, whatever they are, Connor Renshaw and Benji have now gone 2-0. They won their second match against the dynamic duo. And it was a very interesting way in which they won it, because at one point it looked like Connor Renshaw was going to revert to his old ways, the SCC ways, if you like, and try and cheat to win the match. But he eventually decided to go along with what Benji has been trying to teach him, take the high road, so to speak, and go on without cheating. And it worked. Benji and Renshaw picked up the win, and they continued to gather momentum, to pick up steam with a 2-0 record here in Defiant. So maybe our tag team champions should take note.
Well, I'm so glad to see that this little idiot Benji is listening to Connor Renshaw's advice. These guys could be champions. Ben could be money if Benji acts like man's best friend and does what Big Connor tells him, because let's be honest, it's working. It's paying dividends. So far, they're on a roll. 2 wins on the spin. It's huge. But Dave, what does the future hold for the other side of the coin? And that is Thomas and Mark Billington, the dynamic duo, because they were so impressive at first, but all of a sudden they're starting to find out why the tag team ranks here in Defiant Wrestling are what they are, because they're so competitive.
Yeah, I mean, they're on a mini losing streak, I guess. That's their second loss in a row, isn't it? They lost to Jody Fleisch and Johnny Storm at Lights Out. So I do think the Billingtons will need to regroup slightly here. I think they have the advantage that they are under the tutelage of Marty Jones. So Marty Jones has seen it all in British wrestling, and he will be making sure that, just as he was making sure they didn't get too far ahead of themselves when they arrived in Defiant and were winning matches left, right and centre, that they don't get too down on themselves now. So I'm sure we'll see a pretty level-headed response from the dynamic duo, even though they are still obviously very, very young. We've had a question, though, about Benji, by the way. Alex Jones has tweeted in saying, who should Benji cash in on? Now, that's an interesting question, because that's another sort of unknown going into No Regrets that we haven't really talked about. Benji still has possession, of course, of that Magnificent Seven briefcase, right? So, obviously, Connor Renshaw is hoping that Benji will choose to cash in on the tag team champions so that Renshaw can get a piece of the tag team gold. That's presumably why he's tagging with Benji in the first place. But Benji might not choose to do that, right? There's plenty of other options for the holder of that Magnificent Seven briefcase. What's your thoughts on that? If you were Benji at the moment, where would you be applying your focus when it comes to that briefcase?
Well, I would definitely stick with the plan, stick with what's working, listen to Connor Renshaw, and maybe, just maybe, Benji will be a champion. Now, there are other options. He could gun for Martin Kirby and the Internet Championship, and didn't you just love the fact that Martin Kirby, our Internet Champion, got Stevie Aaron to announce that he wasn't at Loaded, and he especially hoped that everyone had a less than satisfactory time. Now, I'm afraid to tell the Internet Champ that Defiant Wrestling has since had such a flurry of complaints because so many people bought a ticket exclusively to see him. It's unbelievable. But those people are idiots because everyone knows that Martin Kirby is too good for YouTube. He's a pay-per-view attraction. So if Benji wants to be a pay-per-view attraction as well, maybe he goes after Martin Kirby. But no, I was tempted to say Rampage just because I would like to see what happened next. But he has to stay the course and gun for those tag team championships with his partner in crime, Connor Renshaw.
Do you think that's why Martin Kirby is refusing to show up to Loaded, because he is utterly, totally afraid of Benji?
Are you serious?
It's just occurred to me now. All this stuff about, I'm not going to defend the internet title for free on YouTube. Maybe it's because he knows that the man with the Magnificent Seven briefcase is a man who's already beaten him 1, 2, 3.
I cannot believe we're even having this discussion. Now, Martin Kirby is the finest internet champion that Defiant Wrestling has ever had and arguably ever will have. And you mean to tell me that a man who defeated Walter beat Joe Hendry, he's taken on all comers, and you think that Martin Kirby might be scared of a dog?
He's not a dog, is he? He absolutely is not a dog.
I have seen Benji humping legs, and enough said about that.
Have you? When have you possibly seen that?
I've heard rumours, but, listen, all I'm saying is don't go through my internet history. But anyway, that's besides the point.
Anyway, it was just an interesting theory. It just popped into my head then. Maybe that's what this is all about from Martin Kirby. Maybe it was just fear all along. Anyway, those are the two matches that we wanted to talk about that were announced this week for No Regrets. Kid versus Starr. SCC going to defend the tag titles against Team White Wolf. Don't forget, you can still join us in person in Manchester on just over a week now, not very long until May 25th. No Regrets. If you want to join us in Manchester, wearedefiant.com/tickets to get some of the last remaining tickets there. If you're going to watch on demand, go to Access Defiant. That's access.wearedefiant.com, and you can catch us there. Of course, if you're a new customer, you get a month's free trial when you sign up, so you can see all of No Regrets, including the 3rd annual No Regrets Rumble, without paying a penny. So you would be a fool not to do so. Now, before we get to No Regrets in just over a week, we do have one more stop on the road to that event, and that is, of course, this Sunday's Loaded. So let's talk about some of the things that are coming up on Sunday. The Anti-Fun Police. Now, this was strange on this past Sunday's Loaded. We now know that, according to No Fun Done, HT Drake's performance in the 6-man tag team match 2 weeks ago on Loaded, which Dunn says cost his team the match, counts as, in Dunn's word, a second strike against Drake. So to prevent him from suffering a 3rd strike, he's going to teach Drake a lesson by putting Drake in a hardcore match against John Bad Bones Klinger this Sunday on Loaded. Now, apparently you have some better understanding of what goes on in the minds of the Anti-Fun Police than I do, and you certainly know Drake quite well. What's this about?
Listen, this is very disturbing, very distressing, but the Anti-Fun Police are a solid unit. It might not look like it right now. There have been some teething problems, shall we say, and I used the word pressure earlier on when I was talking about Gabriel Kidd. Well, I'm going to use it one more time here, because the pressure that has been coming down on the Anti-Fun Police, and specifically the leader, No Fun Done, the No Fun champion around these here parts, it's been insane. It hasn't been fair. They've been chased all around the place. They've been victimized for crimes. They've been blamed for sending people to hospital. It's all been very distressing, and it's taking its toll. You can see that, and now we have this situation whereby a man who despises hardcore wrestling in No Fun Done is willing to throw one of his trusty lieutenants into the lion's den, and John Klinger, the badness, the most dangerous man in European wrestling today, will get his hands on HT Drake and get to use any weapons he can. Now, thankfully, it works the other way, and Drake can use weapons as well, but this is not a good situation. But I have to say, they're going to pull through, Bradshaw.
Well, the reason I'm confused by it, the reason I say, what's all this about? I'm not confused by Klinger's involvement, because we've seen there is something of an unholy alliance between Klinger and the anti-fun police in recent weeks. That doesn't surprise me. What surprises me is that since No Fun Done won the hardcore title, and it is the hardcore title, let's not forget, they have chosen to rebrand it as the No Fun title, because in Dunn's view, weapons are too much fun now. Right?
Mm-hmm.
With me so far? So
I'm with you.
Why on earth would No Fun Done encourage an environment where weapons are allowed? And not only that, but to do so in a situation where he is putting his trusted lieutenant, HT Drake, at risk of damage or I don't know, at risk of what? You know, who knows at risk of what against someone like Klinger, but all to prove a point, to serve as some kind of punishment for some perceived wrong that Drake has done against his fellow anti-fun police. I'm trying to understand what Dunn is thinking.
Well, it's definitely a punishment. I can tell you that. I spoke to HT Drake shortly after Loaded went off the air, as it happens, and he was very despondent because all Drake wants to do is live up to the high expectations that No Fun Done and Santos have for the anti-fun police. Drake is as much a part of that group as anyone else is, and he's very, very disappointed that his brothers in arms feel the best way to solve this little mini crisis, for lack of a better term, is to put him in harm's way. A hardcore match against the badness John Klinger. Now, that is not a good situation for anyone, least of all when it's your brother, your leader, who is throwing you to the wolves in this way. So,
well, how do you feel about it? Let me ask you how you feel about it, because you've been a pretty ardent supporter of the anti-fun police, and yet you're also one of HT Drake's only friends. He's one of your only friends as well. So it's pretty rare for you to have someone who's a pal, and you've got one in someone like HT Drake. So now, to have so few friends and there to be a risk that one of them's going to get ripped limb from limb on Sunday, that must upset you.
Well, you pointed out that I have few friends far too many times in such a short space of time there. But anyway, I digress. I'll move on. I'm not happy about it. But, you know, No Fun Done is the leader of the anti-fun police, and what he says must go. So, if he feels that Drake warrants a punishment for his actions as of late, then everyone's just going to have to suck it up and deal with it. Because Drake, what he doesn't want to happen is for that strike 3 to occur, because No Fun Done made it perfectly clear that if there was a third strike, Drake, he would be expelled from the anti-fun police, and Bradshaw, no one wants to see that. These guys, they bring light and happiness and good times and order to Defiant Wrestling. No one wants to see them fracture in this way. It's very distressing.
Happiness and good times, that sounds like fun.
Well, no, it's definitely not fun. No, that is not
right.
What happiness and good times are. They put everything into perspective for everyone, and HT Drake has been such a vital part of, you know, spreading the word of the anti-fun police, but unfortunately something else might be spread on Loaded, and that could be the very plasma of HT Drake if John Klinger has anything to do with it.
Well, I think the badness will certainly be spread of John Klinger, who, by the way, Klinger had a birthday this week. Do you know that? That's got me. That just boggles the mind. What if you're someone as sadistic as John Bad Bones Klinger? How do you celebrate a birthday?
In an abattoir, maybe? I don't know.
Murder some kittens or something.
Oh, jeez. What goes on in your mind? That is talk about disturbing.
It's not my mind you need to worry about. I'm just wondering, I don't know. I dread to think how John Klinger spends his birthdays. Anyway, other things going on Loaded this week. We now know, of course, that it will indeed be a one-on-one match between our Defiant World Champion Rampage and the number one contender Mark Haskins at No Regrets. So the reason I say we only now know that is because Rampage took on Kyle Fletcher on Sunday in a non-title match. But if Fletcher had won that match, he would have been added into the title match at No Regrets, making it a three-way match. That didn't happen. Great effort from Fletcher, but Rampage ultimately victorious and showing in the process what a dominant champion he is. So it will be Rampage and Haskins one-on-one. We saw a pretty intense stare down between the two of them as Loaded went off the air. The animus, the dislike between these two has always existed, not just in Defiant, but they've clashed in many other places as well. There's always been a personal disdain, I think it's fair to say, between these two. It seems to be reaching something of a crescendo, though, as we get into this sort of final rundown towards No Regrets. Who does it help, if anyone, that this will be a one-on-one match rather than a triple threat match?
Well, I'm torn on this. At first I had down that Mark Haskins would be happy because now he has that one-on-one shot for the Defiant World Heavyweight Championship that theoretically everyone craves, but theoretically has nothing to do with realism, and the real fact is that Rampage has changed. So maybe Haskins will be happy that it's one-on-one, maybe he won't, because if Kyle Fletcher had been involved in that match while Rampage was busy beating the crap out of him, Haskins might have had an opening to become the new champion. But, if Haskins has any fear, he never ever shows it. He came out to make a statement at the closure of Loaded, and he didn't just chase off Rampage, he chased off Rory Coyle as well. And did you notice that Rory Coyle, this weirdo, this maniac, seemed to be filming everything that was happening, and he had that sick, twisted smile on his face? What the hell was going on there?
Well, I'm not even going to try and get... Again, we've tried this before, right, where we've tried to dissect what's going on in Rory Coyle's head, and we never get very far. But we know on Sunday that it's going to be the contract signing now between Rampage and Mark Haskins. General Amin will officiate that final showdown between the two of them ahead of No Regrets. We know in wrestling there's a history of stuff going down in contract signings, right? It doesn't always go without incident when you get a contract signing between two guys who have a dislike for each other like Rampage and Haskins do. Which one of them, if either, need something out of this contract signing? I know that seems like an odd question, but is there one of them that needs to make a statement more than the other? Maybe Haskins needs to show that he has no fear towards Rampage. We saw that at the end of Loaded this week, but does he need to emphasize that point by staring him down and not blinking when they sign that contract on Sunday? What do either of these men need to achieve as a final message to the other at the contract signing before they go one-on-one in Manchester?
Well, to me, this is a prime opportunity for one man, either champion or challenger, to not only send a message, but physically wound the other man heading into No Regrets. Because, as you said, we all know the kind of stuff that happens when those contracts are being signed. And if you're General Amin, why the hell would you put yourself into the middle of this combustible situation? You've watched as Rory Coyle has manipulated his way to the top here in Defiant. He has changed Rampage forever, and now you want to put your own body inside that ring with men like that. It doesn't make sense to me, but Mark Haskins, as I touched on earlier, he's sure not going to back down. I would assume that he will have Vicky Haskins and her little friend, that barbed wire baseball bat that she carries around. Maybe they'll be there as well. This could be one to watch. It could be very dangerous. It could have, here's that word again, ramifications for No Regrets. There's no way around it. Something is going down on Loaded.
All right. Well, speaking of things that could be one to watch, if you want, I guess you'd call this a sleeper going into Loaded, as in it's something that maybe people aren't thinking about as much as they are about the contract signing or this punishment match that Drake's got against Klinger. But it's also been announced that we're going to see Robbie X against Sean Custom one-on-one on Loaded. I think this match has the potential to be something really pretty good. We've seen We've seen a lot of great stuff from Robbie X. We've only seen Sean Custom once in Defiant, but he took Martin Kirby to the limit in that internet title match where we saw Custom lights out. So I think I'm excited to see what happens when you get Custom and Robbie X in the ring together.
Well, this is going to be the beauty of this episode of Loaded, because you have barbarity between Klinger and Drake. You have unpredictability in that contract signing between Rampage and Haskins. And I would say you're going to have some high flying and some seriously slick exchanges between Robbie X and Sean Custom. Now, what this could do for Custom if he defeats Robbie X, it could put Custom back in the frame for maybe another championship effort here in Defiant. It could do the same for Robbie X, quite frankly, because as I like to say, wins and losses most definitely matter here in Defiant. So you're absolutely right, Bradshaw. This is not one to miss. This could be the sleeper hit on Loaded.
All right, so there's something for everyone this Sunday on Loaded. Don't forget, we are on YouTube this Sunday, 8 o'clock UK time, every Sunday on YouTube for absolutely free. The best weekly free wrestling you can get anywhere on the internet is Defiant Wrestling's Loaded every week, every Sunday night on YouTube. Apart from Loaded, what's coming up in your week? Anything? Probably nothing, but give us the highlights.
Well, I'm going to give you one highlight because that's, quite frankly, all you deserve. Now, last week, I made a big play of saying I wanted a gorgeous woman to accompany me down to the ring at No Regrets in Manchester. And since then, I have had a whopping 7,126 applications and requests from eligible women to accompany me in Manchester. And as it happens, 7,127 is my lucky number. So I'm going to personally pick the very next person who slides into those DMs or messages me through any other way, whether it's carrier pigeon, smoke signal, whatever. I'm going to pick you, lucky listener, as the lucky person, lucky all round. You're going to get the chance to stroll down that aisle and strut your stuff with James R. Kennedy. So make haste and make May 25th special.
Presumably it has to be someone who likes water polo.
Well, yes, and also Chilean pro wrestling as well is right up there as one of your interests. If so, then send me a DM. We have much to discuss.
Yeah, you're one of the world's leading experts, aren't you, on Chilean tag team wrestling in particular.
100%.
All right. Well, you can follow my good friend James R. Kennedy. I said that sarcastically, by the way. I'm not adding myself to your list of friends along with Drake. You can follow him on at Top Class Kennedy on Twitter and on Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter at Dave Bradshaw and on Instagram at Dave Bradshaw83. If you want to message us about anything that's going on in Defiant, thank you again for those who sent their questions this week. Don't forget you can tweet us as a company as a whole at Defiant Rest. That's Defiant WRES. Use the hashtag WeAreDefiant to join the conversation online as we get ever closer to No Regrets in Manchester. That is just about going to do it for this week. Any last words? Any words of wisdom to take people through the week ahead?
Well, I would like to invite everyone to stay safe, because, to be honest, there is no chance that anyone on Loaded will be safe if the badness John Klinger has his way.
Good, that was profound. Well, for James R. Kennedy, this is Dave Bradshaw saying thank you for listening. We'll see you on Sunday for Loaded, and we will see you again next week here for more from the ReLoaded podcast.